Hello.
Welcome back, everybody. We're 1 minute early. This is Imran Nanlawala, and I'm here with Yusuf Chowdhury. And today we're going to be covering part two of WordPress, the series, everything you need to know about WordPress to build a successful website. Today we're going to be discussing a pretty interesting and important discussion, and that is the difference between WordPress.com and WordPress.org. Yusuf, how you doing?
Pretty good. There you go. You just popped up. No, what happened with the style, man?
COVID-19, but I'm cutting my own hair out here, man. Cutting my own hair,
Oh my
ironing
god.
my own clothes. It's
Looks like you got some fire, man.
I had the clippers for here, but I didn't have clippers for this part, man. And you know, there's only a few options, which was don't touch it or go real short. So
You know what
decided
I
not to.
do? You know what I do this so-called COVID?
Uh-huh.
I go to the barber shop.
Yeah, I gotta check. I gotta check to see if they're open. I'm sure they're still. I'm sure they're open up now. Uh, but it's been a tough couple months, man. Trying to cut my own hair. So
Hmm.
this is a lesson learned and a few dollars saved.
Hmm.
Um, so quick recap. First week we introduced WordPress, week one, and we talked about the fact that WordPress is a heavily used software. It's heavily used as a website builder. And I think you gave a percentage. I can't remember what that percentage was.
30% of the internet.
30%. We talked about all the support. We talked about all the communities around WordPress, all the different integrations and plugins. So today we're going to talk about WordPress.com versus WordPress.org. And I'm assuming that it's the same service, right? It's just they're both directing towards the same page, and you can get the same type of services, correct?
This is where we need to kind of break it down because I don't know why WordPress is like that in a sense. I mean, the founder when he started, it was something supposed to be completely free, and it is free. But out of that, developers kind of went to a different direction. Where if big companies or any developers wants to generate additional income by developing SaaS on WordPress, so those are the two directions that they went through, right? So, am I able to share
Yeah,
my screen?
of course.
So, I want to show the difference so people can get an idea. Because the first thing is, people go to, when we ask anybody, like, let's say any prospect or any potential prospect or client, if they have an existing WordPress-based website, when I tell them, do you have the free version or the self-hosted, and they don't understand what's the two different terminology means, right? So a lot of people assume the WordPress.org is the self-hosted, and the WordPress.com is the free version. Well, look at this, man! A new update. 37 of the website is built on WordPress. Okay, so, that's new. Okay, that's new update. There you go. So, so typically, when you talk about WordPress.com, this is similar to if people are aware of services such as LiveJournal, Tumblr, Blogger.com, or many blogging free services, right? You basically sign up with, let's say, Tumblr, have your own Tumblr account or WordPress account. So this is the so-called the free version, right? As y'all can see here. So if you are in high school, if you're in college, if you just want to blog, you don't care about a business, you don't care about anything else except just starting something basic and blogging about your ideas and hobbies, then for sure you can go to WordPress.com, right? And the interesting thing is that WordPress.com, I mean, you can sign up for free, get you on whatever the name of your blog is. Let's say crazyusuf.wordpress.com. That's how it typically used to be. So you wouldn't get your own domain name, you wouldn't pay for the hosting. It's just like having your whatever the name is under the WordPress.com. So right now, recently, WordPress.com trying to get into the business of providing it as a separate service, right? So when you click on like plans and pricing, again, it is causing some confusion, and people think like, oh, okay, I'm not using the free version, I'm using the paid version. But anything from the WordPress.com, you are still under that platform, okay? Which means there are things you cannot do. For example, you cannot upload premium custom plugins. You cannot upload a premium themes or templates, right? So in a way, it's limited, right? So I don't recommend going to WordPress.com if you're a business or if you want to start a business, because there's some limitation. Even though .com tries to somehow get into that niche, which is similar to Weebly or Wix and whatnot, but I would still recommend the self-hosted WordPress. Now, what is the second confusion? The second confusion, when people think and believe that they don't associate or they are not with WordPress.com, they say I'm with WordPress.org, which is actually an incorrect statement, because WordPress.org does not offer any service. Okay, WordPress.org basically, it's a place, it's a forum community, right? It's a support community. It shows you all the theme within the WordPress sphere. It shows you all the free plugins. And if you want to go so-called self-hosted, we have to understand, what do we mean by self-hosted? Self-hosted basically means you got a domain name for your business. You went to GoDaddy, you went to Liquid Web, DigitalOcean, SiteGround, and you purchased a domain name, right? And you're also paying for a web hosting service, because even WordPress.org is telling you, look, we don't provide any service. All we're asking you to do is get the hosting service. So they're recommending Bluehost, DreamHost, or SiteGround. Purchase the hosting through them and buy the domain through them, and install the WordPress to the web host container that you're using, right? So that's why we call it self-hosted, because you are hosting it on the hosting server that you're paying for. Make sense? So typically businesses need to understand, you are either with the free WordPress. When we say free WordPress, we mean by the WordPress.com or the self-hosted. Do not associate it with the .org. Just think in your head, okay, self-hosted mean I paid for the domain, I'm paying for the hosting, and I'm managing it, I'm installing it, I'm doing everything. So that's like the pros and cons. Like with the free version, you're not paying for anything. There's no backup. They'll do the backup. They'll do the update. You're just blocking content, right? But with the self-hosted, you as a business, you have a full ownership of the domain name. You have a full ownership of the hosting service itself, and you can also hire a WordPress developer, which what our company have. We have WordPress developers that can completely customize everything based on your need or application or business model and whatnot. Make sense? So that's a difference. When we say build a website or have a website that is a self-hosted WordPress-based website, what do we mean by that is that you get the domain from the domain provider, you get the hosting from hosting provider, and you install the WordPress to it and build it using the WordPress application. So that is what we mean by self-hosted WordPress. Okay, so don't get confused, because people always get confused between the .org and .com. They say, I'm not with .com, but I'm with the .org. But technically .org don't even offer anything. It makes sense? So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I would say one way I look at it is that WordPress.org is educational and it has resources, so it offers you a download. Like you said, it's self-hosted, so it'll offer you the download of WordPress, and you can install it wherever you want on your own server, on one of the recommended servers. It also gives you an overview of different plugins and different things that work with WordPress. But wouldn't you say that WordPress.com is probably advantageous for a certain type of clientele, because they do have the premium versions of their plans, right? So you mentioned the free version, but in the premium version, they have, you can have different plugins, different premium themes, and all these things that we're going to discuss in future episodes. But wouldn't you say that so there's two ways of looking at it, the way I see it, right? You can hire developers like ourselves, and we'll help you on the self-hosted plans, and we can build out exactly what you want. But if you're someone who there's two ways of looking at it. I know I said that already, but you're either going to spend more money with .com or you're either going to spend more money with .org. It all depends how you approach it. But I could also see .com potentially saving someone a little bit more money, in the sense that, okay, you got your hosting in one place and you also have some support in one place. Or do you disagree with that?
That is a very interesting question. By the way, Charles in the house. What's up, Charles? So that's a very good question. It's funny, because if you go to the WordPress.com, if you look at the prices, guess what they're doing? They are actually, they partner with the domain provider internally, right? And they also acquired Pressable, which is a San Antonio-based company that manages WordPress self-hosted website. So they basically, in the back end, they just partnered with them, right? So as if you are going to go, again, buying it for yourself from the domain provider and getting your own hosting. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a similar thing. But the issue is when you look at the prices, they still give you some limitation. You know what I mean? If you go like different packages, personal, premium, business, and e-commerce, if you look at the features, there's some limitation on the back end that you cannot fully perform, right? But if you purchase your own domain, like, from, let's say, GoDaddy, and pay for the web hosting, right? When you do that, you're not set to those limitations. Makes sense? You can do anything you want without those limitations, because some of these features under the .com, for example, you cannot have a full custom plugin, you cannot have full custom few things. So why even go that route, right? So to make it easier, just buy your own domain directly from GoDaddy, because you're gonna own it, right? Or you're gonna pay for the hosting directly because you're gonna own it. Because if you do it through WordPress.com, you're doing it through them. And if you want to transfer, then there might be some challenging where you have to request removal and release and whatnot. I don't even look at it at all with the WordPress.com, right?
Okay.
In fact, many students that came to our WordPress workshop, some of them did pay, let's say, the monthly. And when we looked at the back end, it doesn't look like the self-hosted version. So that means now they have to learn a little bit how the self-hosted version, the back end work. Make sense? So that's why from the get-go, I basically tell them, listen, man, just buy the domain, get the hosting, and start, learning by installing the actual WordPress application. Just go from there, because that way you will still save money and you can do a lot of stuff with it. You know what I mean? So that is my personal recommendation. And number two, I honestly, when WordPress.com start to add all this new feature, I haven't really even got into like testing all these, how it works. I did ask some of my colleagues, some of my team. They said, yeah, it's okay. It's not, it depends. And some of them said, still, we got to stick what we all already offering. But if I get a chance, I would definitely love to maybe go back and look at all the full details, right? Like a full details, and then I can do a full comparison. But when it comes to, like, for example, here I'm looking at one of the prices. Let's see, this one here, business plan, $25 a month, right? $25 a month. Why? Because you can add an SEO plugin. Well, if you just buy the domain and get the hosting, you can still add an SEO plugin. You don't have to pay the monthly. Do you see what I'm saying? You can pay $5 a month on, let's say, or $10 a month just to host multiple domains versus just one domain with that package. Do you see what I'm saying? So there is a pros and cons, but I would still highly recommend that you should stick with the self-hosted, because you have a full ownership and you can move any hosting provider, you can move to any domain provider, and you can also hire a WordPress developer that can expand and take your web application design to the next level versus just focusing on the .com, even though the same company. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I see it as advantageous for them. I mean, they have now a few different services, right? They have a subscription service like you mentioned earlier, like Weebly, like Wix, like Squarespace. So they've entered that market, which makes sense, and they're going to get some clientele, and they've partnered with Pressable and whatnot. But on the other hand, they've still stuck to how they started off by offering this like deployment of this software, which is WordPress, and then review and links to these different plugins and themes. So I actually find it to be very intriguing and advantageous in some ways. But I think you're absolutely right. There's pros and their cons. So the pros is they've developed and they have some more options now. But the cons are it's not really tested, or like you're saying that there's been other ways of deploying these type of websites before, which are more true and tested. And also it might be upfront a little bit more per month, especially if you don't know what you're doing by going with .com, because they're saying, okay, we'll take care of X, Y, and Z. But as you mentioned with the SEO example, it's a free plugin anyways. So you can, as long as you're hosting it on a different host, you can just install it.
You're absolutely correct. And plus, I mean, again, it depends. Like, who wants to use it? Like college student, high school student, they want to do the blogging thing, that's fine. But even if you look at it, I mean, amazingly, like, you have to understand, even from their business point of view, if WordPress.com want to get into the market of Weebly, Wix, and Squarespace, they have to make it limited. They cannot make it completely open. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because if they make it completely open, then nobody's going to stop paying for the monthly membership, because they can do that with the self-hosted way. So even though they're offering this service, there's some benefit of, like, for example, I don't have to worry about internal security. I don't have to worry about the backup stuff. We don't want to take care of all that. But again, as a business, you have to look at multiple things on why you're deciding to go to that route, right? Initially, let's say, you know how in one of the workshops we talked about that it's better for you to have a website, even if it's not even built on WordPress, but even you even have it like one of those template, at least have it. I will give you Yusufy you just because you're having it, which is better than not having it. Make sense? So, but when it comes to like right now, when we build sites for our clients, I basically train and teach them how to do the self-hosted, and we build everything on that platform because they can do a lot of sophisticated, complicated application. Yeah, something that you cannot do with the .com. You're still limited. And I was like, when I've seen some of the students that come to my workshop, and I was kind of excited to see, okay, you guys are paying for this. Let me see how it works. Let's go and open the screen and let's do a comparison. And unfortunately, even then, there were some application or some features they couldn't actually implement. So they decided to switch it to the self-hosted.
So then I know next week, so I'm just trying to connect the two. So we're going to be talking about themes and then premium themes. So compare now the way that the themes work on .com versus .org. So naturally, we've gravitated towards .org now because we have more independence, we have more control, we have more options in terms of moving from one host to another. We have more options in terms of working with a developer to customize our services and our site to the best fit that we want. So how do themes work when it comes to .com versus .org?
Okay.
And we don't have to go into too much detail, but just before we talk about
basically kind of quickly, most of the templates, most of the WordPress templates from within the WordPress.org or WordPress.com are the same. They look exactly the same. They function exactly the same. But with the .org, when you download it or when you self-host the application to your domain to the hosting provider that you're serving, that you are paying for, you can fully 100% customize the whole thing. With the .com, you have to work with what you have. That's it. Just like in a Weebly and Wix. Makes sense? So that's the difference. But in terms of like the look, the names and the types, both are the same, right? But in the self-hosted, you can completely strip it out and just do whatever you want. With the .com, you don't have that capability, even though they're offering some CSS coding option. But again, you are limited with what you can do.
Okay, so I guess then your vote is .org. That just to kind of bring this.
I wouldn't even say .org. I would say self-hosted WordPress-based website.
Yeah, but again, people should gravitate towards the .org because it's gonna offer them all those resources in the sense that it's like a Wikipedia. I'm not gonna say it's a Wikipedia, but it's almost like something that serves like an encyclopedia for everything WordPress in terms of
like you said a few minutes ago. It's more like an informational site, not like a service, because .com has a backend server and they host all your information. They host all your login and your own specific blog site, right? It's like a whole service company. .org is just an information site. It's just like a forum, You just go there, you look at it, and some information, that's about it. So I personally tell people, forget both, right? I just tell them, get the domain, get the hosting, and install WordPress. and that is called self-hosted because you're hosting it by yourself on your own server versus using the .com. Because if people keep using the .org and .com, they get confused too, because some people think that, no, .org does provide, because I got to self-host it through .org. No, you didn't, because .org is telling you, go to Bluehost, go to SiteGround, go to DreamHost to get it through them. You see what I'm talking about?
So then, okay, I think this conclusion and this conversation came to a pretty quick close compared to previous weeks. So next week, our dear viewers and listeners, we're going to go more into talking about what a WordPress theme is, what it does for your WordPress website, how it changes it or modifies it. And then following that, we're going to be talking about free themes and premium themes. Why, when you should go with a free theme and when you should go with a premium paid theme, and what are some of the use cases for that. So Yusuf, any final words? Otherwise, we can close it up.
Well, if you all have any question about WordPress, make sure you ask us questions.
Yeah, so let's maybe we can leave it on for about a minute to see if our friend Charles has any questions.
Yeah, Charles, he builds sites on WordPress, but he was also testing. I think his own company site is built on Webflow, something like I never used it, but it was like interesting. It's a different application, but now he's providing or working on clients' site that is built on WordPress. I wish what's his name, Sheikh Hammer was here, because he's also learning how to build a site on WordPress. I gave him a couple of resources, and he was getting all excited because he saw all these templates and plugins, stuff to like download and buy. I said, hey, be careful. You don't want to end up being a junkie. Hey, Larry, what's going on? So you don't want to end up like, being a plugin junkie or a template junkie. Just, just learn the basic, go log in on the back end of the self-hosted base WordPress and go through every section on the back end, like every section. Don't leave anything else. Just go through every section, understand what it is and how to use it, right? And make something very basic. And after that, specialize in a specific template or theme that we're going to talk about it next week, and the differences and the pros and cons and whatnot.
Cool. All right, man. So we didn't have any questions coming in. So guys, we'll see you next week when we talk about themes. Thank you all for attending. And Yusuf, see you next week, brother.
All right, man. Have a good one.